Let's get started on RAID, Redundant Array of Integrated Disks. There are several different types of volumes that you can implement on a server: a simple volume, or a span volume, or a mirrored volume, or a striped volume, or a stripe set with parity. Let's look at each one of those. Let's start out with a simple volume. A simple volume occupies a single disk. The C drive is the volume, and it occupies only a single disk. You could have a single hard disk on your server, which has a single simple volume on it, or you might have multiple simple volumes on your server. With simple volumes, the drive letter is associated with only one single disk. Now, let's look at other types of volumes, such as spanning and striping and mirroring. We will start out with spanning. Suppose we have the following problem. We have a 75 gig hard disk and a 75 gig hard disk and a 100 gig hard disk, but we have a database file which is 175 gig in size. So it won't fit on any one of our hard disks. So what we can do is we can implement spanning. Spanning is where the D drive is stretched over two separate physical hard disks, and what this does is it logically combines two physical hard disks. So the operating system sees a single D drive which is 175 gig in size. Disk spanning is typically used when you want to logically combine two small hard disks to make one larger hard disk. Now let's look at RAID level 0, which is also called disk striping, and it looks a lot like spanning in that one logical drive letter is stretched across two hard disks, but the difference is with disk striping, the operating system writes to two hard disks simultaneously and therefore is much faster. This is an example of striping across two disks, but here's an example of striping across 8 disks. So let's say we're going to save the number 7 to the hard disk. The number 7, as you know, is 5 zeros and 3 ones. And if we had a single hard disk, all those 8 bits would be saved to a single hard disk. But since we are using striping, then all 8 of those bits are written across 8 separate hard disks simultaneously, and therefore it is 8 times faster than not using a stripe set. A stripe set is also called RAID level 0, and it increases performance. Now let's look at RAID level 1. RAID level 1 is also called disk mirroring, and it provides fault tolerance. We have two hard disks, and whenever the user saves data to the first hard disk, the user doesn't know it, but the data is immediately copied to the second hard disk, which provides redundancy. And that way, if either hard disk crashes, that's okay. We have the other one. Disk mirroring provides fault tolerance. Here's how you mirror a hard disk. So we look at our Windows server right here, and the first disk, disk number 0, has the operating system on it. The second disk, disk number 1, has the data files on it. And the third disk, disk number 2, is totally unused. So I want to mirror the D drive to the third hard disk. So what I do is I right-click on the D drive and I select Add Mirror. I select the disk that I want to mirror to, which is disk number 2, which is the third disk. I click on Add Mirror. Then I click on OK, and the mirroring process begins. Notice the contents of the first hard disk is being copied to the second hard disk. And they are syncing up, and they are now mirrored. So whenever a user saves data to the first hard disk, it's immediately saved to the second hard disk. This is called disk mirroring, and it provides fault tolerance. So let's not confuse RAID level 0 with RAID level 1. RAID level 0 is called striping, and it allows the operating system to write to multiple hard disks simultaneously, and it increases performance, but it's not fault tolerance. RAID level 1 is mirroring, and it is fault tolerant but does not provide increased performance. So you can have a simple volume, a span volume, a stripe volume, or a mirrored volume. Now, let's look at some advanced RAID configurations, which are a more expensive way to go. RAID level 0 plus 1 and RAID level 5. RAID level 0 plus 1 combines striping and mirroring. RAID level 0 plus 1 is where we would have a server which has 2 hard disks and the data is stretched. The volume is stretched across 2 hard disks, and that gives us the stripe set for increased performance. And then what we do is mirror each disk in the stripe set, and then that gives us fault tolerance. But the drawback is it's much more expensive. We started out with just 1 hard disk, and now we have 4 hard disks. That's why RAID 0 plus 1 is kind of an expensive way to go. So we've got spanning, which is not RAID at all, and then we have RAID level 0, which is a stripe set, RAID level 1, which is mirroring, RAID level 0 plus 1, which is a mirrored stripe set. And in the next section, we will discuss RAID level 5, which is a stripe set with parity. And this concludes our section introducing RAID.